Thank you so much, Kaylee. As Kaylee mentioned, we got John Kingston, our editor at large. I can't believe nobody's tracked him down yet. He's still out there, folks. So keep an eye open. If you catch him, you'll win a prize. But today we're.
No idea what that means.
I don't either, but whatever. Good morning, John. How are you, my friend?
Yeah. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. So there's a new ATA survey, I guess, out. It talks about driver pay. Let's dig into the details here. We got some interesting stuff.
Yeah, the ATA survey actually was, this goes back several days. The ATA came out with its driver pay survey, and its research arm, ATRI, came out with its trucking cost survey, both on the same day. So we wrote the driver pay story first. I mean, it was, quite frankly, nothing in there that was shocking. Median compensation for drivers in 2021 was $69,687. That was up 18% above where it was in 2019. I think most people probably would have guessed at some kind of number like that. One of the interesting was more than 90% of respondents in the truckload sector to the ATA survey increased pay last year. Average increase was 10.9%. This really raises the question, what did the other 10% do? Given that it looked like everybody was raising pay last year.
Yeah.
They talked about referral bonuses quite a bit. The ATA survey seemed a lot more interested in referral bonuses rather than sign-on bonuses. I think that there's research indicates that actually has a little more clout than a sign-on bonus, which, sometimes somebody works just enough to capture that sign-on bonus and then they leave. But referral bonuses, even though they were only $11.50, but it was a gain of $150. And the ATA seemed to think like this is an important part of compensation out there, referral bonuses. So that survey came in kind of where you would have expected it to. It was 100% of LTL companies had increased their pay last year too. So most of the numbers in that survey sort of came in about where you might have guessed. Now, the other survey. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say the interesting thing that stuck out to me is that about 60% of respondents said that they've got plans to continue those increases through the rest of this year and even into next year, which is surprising given that, one, those costs are rising for trucking, which we're going to talk about next, and also that rates are continuing to slow down.
Yeah, exactly. And this has always been a problem with trucking is that salary increases or compensation increases are sticky and rates are not. So, yeah, that was kind of surprising, too. But I think they feel there's really no other choice. So, they're going to compress their margin as a result. But if you can't move any freight because you don't have a driver, then the revenue on that is zero. And that's always the case.
It really is. So, John, was it just fleet information, or does it break it down any further than you said LTL? 100% of them did do that. So there's some delineation of LTL, truckload, that type of stuff. Does it break it down any further than that? Small, big, medium fleets, OOs, any of that type of stuff?
There was. I don't. Quite frankly, we didn't get that into the story. The story was running kind of long to begin with. But that information is downloadable. If you go to ATA's site, you can download all their information, and you can spend hours on granular information, just immersing yourself in it.
I only do that when I'm talking about distillate molecules, my friend. I keep it real.
So let's talk about the ATRI survey, because I didn't get to write that until yesterday, but I actually kind of found it more interesting. It is a lot more granular. It is a survey of literally thousands of carriers. Even though there are more truckload carriers in this country than LTL carriers actually accounted for the largest number of respondents. But I still think the number of truckload carriers that responded was large enough, to have a critical mass. And, most of the other media that covered this just kind of went with costs this year, costs in 2021, because that was a survey year, were higher than 2020. But I really didn't want to write that. And so I kind of looked at the granular information. And what really struck me was the figure on fuel costs. Now, you would figure the fuel cost figures, fuel cost numbers, would correlate very closely with the increase or decrease in the price of fuel. So the data in the survey goes back to 2012. And that year, fuel cost was 64.1 cents per mile. Remember the price of oil in 2012, 2013, and in the first part of 2014 were pretty high. We were fairly consistently up in the $100 Brent, $90, $95 WTI range. And then it started to fall in 2014. So the 2021 fuel cost figure was 41.7 cents per mile. So that's 64.1 cents 10 years ago. 41.7 really 9 years later, 12 to 19 to 21. And if you compare the average cost of the pump price to that number was down like 17% over that time, while the average cost per fuel was down like 34 to 35. Average fuel cost was down about 34 to 35%. So really the average fuel cost had a decline twice as much as could be accounted for just by the price of the pump. And clearly that's got to be a sign of, and it actually doesn't say, this is me drawing my conclusions here, that's got to be a function of fuel efficiency. I actually reached out to Mike Roth of the North American Council on Fuel Efficiency to get their numbers, and we weren't able to connect yesterday. But those numbers have consistently come out showing, my guess is that 2021, I'll bet the average miles per gallon on an 18-wheeler probably started with a 7, and now it probably starts with a 9. And in the best circumstances, there's the legend of the trucks that are getting 10. And when you look at the other costs that actually broke out, driver wages, as you can imagine, are up. It was 41.7 cents in 2012, now 62.7. Benefits were 11.6. And now they're 18. There were a couple of other really minor areas that had cost decreases over the 9 years. And it's really been fuel costs that have kept total costs from really running away. And again, it's not all because of declines in price at the pump. It's also because of better fuel efficiency. And I'm going to make this sweeping conclusion from these numbers that increased fuel efficiency has saved this industry's butt. It really has. So that's where I found the numbers most interesting.
John, did this ATRA report break out any numbers as far as maintenance goes as well? Because when we talk about maintenance and raw materials cost, not raw materials cost, parts cost right now, aftermarket parts, et cetera, it's hard to get those parts. And so you're running often longer times in between regular scheduled maintenance because you can't get the parts that you need, which can add up in cost, right?
Right. So the cost figure on maintenance for 2012 was 13.8. It was 14.8 in 2020, and then took a pretty big increase to 17.5 in 2021. So you're right that maintenance costs have definitely risen, and they've risen over the course of the 9 years that actually laid out the data. The one area that went down that kind of surprised me was tires. 4.4 cents per mile back in 2012, and now 4.1 cents in 2021. That's the kind of cost I would have just assumed would have gone up. So one of the biggest increases percentage-wise were tolls, which went from 1.9 cents per mile to 3.2 cents per mile in 2021. But yeah, you're right. Maintenance did go up. Insurance premiums also went up quite, 6 point, I don't have my glass. Can I put my glasses on TV? Hang on a second here.
Yeah.
6.3 cents. 6.3 cents in 2012 and 8.6 cents in 2021. So those are steady, solid increases, and they all add up. And like I said, if it wasn't for increased fuel efficiency, I think that this industry would be looking at a much more significant cost structure. And let me just do the grand total here, okay? Because that actually was the one that was highlighted in a lot of places. The total cost, the kind of all-in cost in 2020 was 1.646. Now, let's note that in 2012, it was 1.633. Essentially, it hadn't changed in 8 years. And then last year, it shot up to 1.855. And certainly, even though I keep talking about the fuel costs being held in check by over time by better efficiency, the reality is that they went from 30.8 cents in 2020 to 41.7 cents in 2021. So that counted for about half of the increase between 2020 and 2021, and the driver wages were tacked on about another 6 cents. So just fuel costs and driver wages between 2020 and 21, and that's where you're dealing with, more than half of the increase between 2 years in the all-in cost per mile.
Excellent stuff. So, John, thank you so much for breaking that down for us today. Very, very interesting things. And we'll look forward to talking with you again very, very soon. Everybody catch John's stuff on FreightWaves.